Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Stephen Ellestad on the line, and he's president and CEO of Innervoice Media. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Good to be here.
All right, Stephen. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So having someone else in the media industry like yourself who has a very unique model that we'll go into today. So you're working with studios, you're working in music, you're working in various verticals, and you're even working with some beginners. I mean, through your studio. So we got a lot to talk about here today. But before we get into that, I'll start with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Stephen, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Stephen, what mission matters to you?
What mission matters to me? Innervoice Media, we're a multifaceted, full-service media production company that offers a range of facilities, resources, and services. But fundamentally, it's about access to stories, access to people, access to platforms. And until the rise of the internet, it was really difficult for the average person to find access to any kind of platform with any reach beyond the most local. And media companies made the rules, and creators, journalists, people with stories had huge hurdles to gain access to these platforms and any sizable audience. And the internet flipped that on its head. It opened up a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, with this explosion, we had so much noise in the channel, and now the struggle was to be heard. Media takes talent and vision, but it also takes technology, training, and resources. And so along with our commercial basis, where we generally orient ourselves from a commercial perspective, we're really active in the promotion of independent media and access to its platforms across a range of communities, both creative and socioeconomic. And so we're involved with outreach, education, and engagement at all levels, from beginners to college to film schools to peer development and professional development, and working directly with municipalities, educational institutions, and private sector organizations to both promote and develop independent media access and awareness. So it's not just a commercial thing; it's really about facilitating this as a cultural and creative force.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I find that's just so unique about your platform. I mean, some people when they, as they build, as the companies grow, as they explore different niches or channels, like they're not necessarily always thinking about how to keep the creativity in there, who these platforms are elevating in terms of their voice, and like who gets to be seen and how and why, like democratizing that, allowing more people to have access. I mean, it's a big deal. It's one of the things that helps our society move forward, in my opinion. And we'll go further into this, but before we get even further, because I'm already going on a tangent on this one, Stephen, because it's a great topic. I want to know more about you. So, like, where did this love for media, for film, like where did this begin for you?
Oh, I've started actually the music side. I've been playing music and playing since I was 6, and then I ended up working full time as soon as I got out of the military. I actually did communications in the Army, which really got me more on some of the tech side of it. And working as a touring artist, as a session musician and a touring sideman, I just slowly started growing more and more into the technical side and the business side, leading to opportunities in the industry. And so I started branching out, moving into video with commercial music video, moving into promotion, working with artists on label services. And fundamentally, it showed me that really the resources are there finally for us to do everything that needs to be done in media. And it came around sooner in music than in video. But now it's very true even in film. The equipment is available. The tools are available. And there's an opening of access in terms of the best quality talent will shine through. In fact, this winter, we just saw with Squid Games. I mean, you wouldn't expect something like that to be a runaway hit, but it's a good story, well told, with good production value. And that always has an audience if it's given a voice to a platform.
Totally agree with this. And the other thing is just the opportunity to me. Like, it's kind of like it's the age of the creatives, right? Like now you see people do things with phones. You see people do things with, I mean, I'll be upfront. So this show, I mean, this started on an iPhone with regular iPhone. Didn't even have the fancy headset, the iPods. I don't think they were out yet. Now that I think about it, it's 5 years ago. So this first 300 episodes were shot on my phone, and there was no video, nothing. And we built an audience, and we went out there and did it. And we had a message. Had something we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that we are providing a platform for others to tell their story, and it stuck. So that being said, there'll be some creatives, there'll be some people watching this that are maybe considered traditionally as business people who maybe aren't supposed to be creative. Like, people like to put people in boxes all the time. But what would you say to those people out there that maybe have a message, they have a story, they have something they want to do, and a message they want to get out there and get told? Like, what kind of things would you tell them on going from, let's just say, inception concept in your mind to what you're an expert at, which is actually getting an end product out? Like, what kind of things would you tell them?
The first thing above everything else is messages. Story matters more than anything else. You have to have compelling stories to tell in whatever format that is, whether it's news or information or advertising or narrative, documentary. If it's not a compelling story that's well told, a great story shot on an iPhone will crush a bad story shot on a bunch of Aries. It doesn't make a difference. But the rest of it, you learn this stuff because it's an iterative process. And aside from storytelling, probably the most fundamental thing is so much of it's about planning, organization, and pre-production, because every mistake increments in cost and time to repair through each stage of the process. It's easy to fix something in pre-production. It's always awful to fix it in post, no matter how much you think you can do it. But fundamentally, and that's with music, that's with any type of new media, any type of stuff. It's so much of it's about project planning and knowing what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, knowing how you're going to deliver it. And then the rest of it develops over time. It just becomes a matter of developing expertise in the niceties of it, the technicalities, et cetera.
Now, I know one of the things you do, obviously you work with big brands, you work with professional talent, you work with people that do this for a living, major film, like you do all of these things, but you also work with beginners or people that are, let's just say, not quite as seasoned. So you seeing that range of talent that you're working with really on a daily and weekly basis. Let's talk about mindset for a moment. Like, the idea, I know for myself, like the first time you don't know this about me, Stephen, but I have the world's record for the worst YouTube channel ever. My very first channel the first time I turned on a camera, Stephen, I was like, talk about deer in headlights. I was a financial advisor working over in Century City. I had on this little camera and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a YouTube channel. It was bad. I shot maybe 90 episodes over the course of 3 months. I do it all weekend. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. And at some point mentally, I had to get out of my own way and kind of my mindset and just say, to do it and to work on the craft. But that was my story. You see a lot of different people and you have access to many different stories over longer. You've been in the business much longer than myself. What kind of things would you tell people about, like, just mindset and how to get out there and to do it?
The first is finish the work. And the second thing is you're not going to create a great podcast till you probably created about 90 bad ones. You're going to have to go through that process. It's a natural part of the creative development. And because failure is where our successes come from. And every failure really is just an opportunity to not make the same mistake again. Always fail better, fail bigger.
I'm in. And the other part is that's really changed to me a little bit as when we talk about this idea of reinventing media and what's acceptable. I agree with everything you said about story. All these things are important. Like everything you said, 100% agree. One thing I throw in there is that people are a little bit more forgiving nowadays as well. Like if we even think about like just, post, pandemic, all the other things, like you see, professional CNBC, other things like that, like people are shooting in their homes, in their office, like different things. Like I feel like the world is kind of prime now for other creators and for people that want to get their message out there, because it's also a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah, I think so. With one very strong caveat, that it comes to know your audience, because that doesn't fly on Netflix or HBO. It does very much fly in a lot of areas of media, but that's because every audience is kind of is equally tailored to the media as the media is tailored to the audience. And so what is just great on a YouTube channel and is forgiven, is even considered as charming, starts to look as a lack of preparation at the highest levels of media production. And so just knowing where your audience is and where it's going to deliver, even episodes, I mean, one of the classic things is even look at like the first season of many shows. Look at The Office, the first season versus everything else. It's just, everything catches its pace and its tempo and develops. And you have a little bit of grace period, but not necessarily a huge one. And for standalone media, it's really, you need to know that audience from the get-go, whether it's a corporate message, whether it is a creative story, whether it's a music album. You need to deliver a production value that's commensurate with the expectations, in my mind, the best of the audience you're looking for. But it doesn't mean you have to be the best. It means you have to aim to be the best and do your best to hit that level. And if you're appropriate to your audience, then it will generally play out.
Yeah, well said. Great caveat. Totally agree with this. What flies on YouTube definitely maybe not going to translate to Netflix. So totally agree on this. So going a step further on Innervoice Media. So, like, I don't know how you're pulling this off, this business model, but this is one of the other reasons I was happy to have you on the show, because I want to pick your brain. You're doing music, film, TV, working in the education space, working with, it's obviously seasoned talent, beginners. I mean, like how are you doing this?
It comes down to, I started developing kind of the business model itself almost 6.5 years ago. And what I wanted to do is, coming from my experiences working with labels and artists, and then moving into especially music for video, not necessarily audio post, licensing, music supervision, et cetera. I just saw there's a lot of overlap there, and they're all very differently structured, kind of in the traditional model, but by being able to offer, a full service in-house scoring and sound design, as well as recording studios, and doing that for music clients, that also lets us leverage the publishing. We can give discounts to the music clients in a way that if they're going to let us put it into, like, say, the non-exclusive catalog for licensing for the independent film artists. And so basically it's a lot of kind of what I call co-leverage verticals. So they're designed to, generally, you have a business model. Buy low, sell high, end up with more at the end of the day. And that's great if you're selling apples, and it works in most business, of course. But what it really comes down to is margin, and how do you both fabricate opportunities to both spread your margins across multiple spaces for both a diversification from risk, but also, more importantly, to allow yourself to build and grow organically. And so that one could take up the slack, where the other one is just catching its steam or whatever. But it's a case where there's a very synergistic effect, I found, where you have recording and music versus audio versus commercial video work versus working on creative narrative and doing workshops and educational. All those have different opportunities for different revenue centers, but they all share a lot of the same sunk costs. They all share a lot of the same collective pool of resources. So by being able to build up both a resource and a talent pool to manage that and support that, we get a lot of efficiencies that you don't normally see.
Can we go one level deeper on this idea of the co-leverage component of this model? And I'll tell you why. Because I when we think about creators and when they're deciding, who they're going to work with, what type of company, if they've never worked with a company, like I'd never really explored it or knew much about it until preparing for this and getting to know yourself more and your company more. Like I didn't know much about it. So I know that there's other people out there in the industry and otherwise that don't kind of necessarily get it. This might be one of the first times they're really trying to understand what that means. So can you go maybe one level deeper on how that works?
Sure. Well, fundamentally, we're able to look at the complete needs. What are you trying to achieve with your dollars today? What is your desired outcome for this? And a lot of times that lets us look at their situation, and it's generally through a process of discovery and exploration. Needs and aren't necessarily always realized in terms of a tangible thing. So it's a combination of production value and creative success and commercial success? What's the outcome of this project or this process? And then how can we help you? Sometimes it's a very much ad hoc. Okay, it's a little bit of a rental of maybe a slightly higher grade camera or an extra, a flag kit and lighting setup, or maybe it's going to be some, costume design and art department or makeup support. Maybe it can be very ad hoc, and it works well at both all levels. We create packages and Chinese menu style, one from column A, column B, because if you're doing something that's very much in your traditional wheelhouse, you're very great, you want to expand into it. One, you might not want to just throw a whole bunch of capital into that right away without doing some exploration and finding out and going to people that have worked in that space to help augment your needs. And then as you develop what you need, sometimes that's all you need is add every so often, we'll use this. And that's where we service a lot of like the mid-sized creative agencies and independent video professionals. Lets them work with their clients, but we're able to supplement their needs in a specific situation to answer a specific thing or raise to a certain level of production value or, creative need. But, it works also by dividing up into tiers of, not just vertically, but also market segmentation. So we're dealing with like production houses, in Hollywood, as well as beginners, students, people that are just learning how to shoot, or people that are just working on, their first kind of media projects. And there's something at every level that we can supplement. And sometimes it's more with resources, education. We're working on building up, both casting and crew registries, location registries, talent, across the board, resources for the creative communities. In addition to strictly being, a ad hoc for hire service. Because it's not always what we have to offer, but it's what we bring to the table as a kind of a center of gravity for the creative communities at large, especially in our general geographic, Northern California, Central California, areas. There's a lot of value to that, where maybe it looks like a loss leader, but it's not, we don't consider it one at all. We consider it a very much an investment in the bigger picture, which is going to create more people needing more expertise and more opportunities.
And so just shifting. So thank you for more insight on the business model and what that means. I'm glad you explained it a little bit further so people can get, because I think it's something special. So switching focus slightly, back to, let's just say, the creative side. So what, like the craft of creativity, like what does that mean to you? And really, how does that relate to business in general?
Sure. So a lot of this started from my research and my work. Was really focused on kind of the philosophy of creating. And I was doing a lot of, the time I was working with Native Instruments and a couple of websites, teaching, especially electronic, based music production platform stuff. And I was really finding myself intrigued, not necessarily by the hardware, because that was what I did every day, and the technique itself, but how that technique was employed and how you would very much often find yourself, and every producer in the world has a million unfinished beats, because that's the nature of the game, especially when you're starting out. And there's every writer has a box of unfinished stories, right? So led me into thinking, what is creativity? And is creativity a function of talent? Is it a function of discipline? Or is it really just a craft that that can be fostered and, to allow you better access to your creative facilities? And honestly, it seems to be a combination of all. It started with literally some blog posts that went into white papers and articles. And, at this point now, we're looking at both, a podcast or possibly even a limited docuseries looking at creativity. And is a really cool project. But fundamentally, the craft of creativity is just a way of looking at creativity as a natural function that really comes from sitting down and doing the work. A lot of my initial inspiration came from Stephen Pressfield, with the War of Art and Do the Work, etc. And it really talks about this concept of, just sit down and do it. And it's the master potter can have the worst day in the world, but he's still going to throw out 100 perfect pots. Whereas some diva might trash a hotel room if her monitor goes out halfway through the second set. And which one's an artist really there? Which one's really, in charge of their creativity? And it comes down to really, I think the process is ultimately in art and creation is very much a huge, if not the real purpose of creating. And we've built the entire facilities here to very much foster that whole mentality. You walk in, there's walls of synthesizers and there's all kinds of art and imagery, both film and music. There's, more instruments and amplifiers and various toys than you can shake a stick at from a creative perspective. And pretty much everything can patch everything and everything can do everything. The idea was to foster this sense of creative, not what are our limitations, but can we find any limitations in here? Because limitations are very powerful in creativity, but work very much better when they're imposed, to in the service of a goal, not just simply by what's surrounding you.
I think you gave a lot of insight into your overall business model, really with just that one line. You said you went from an example of a potter all the way to a diva trashing a hotel room in this. I'm like, that's genius. But then I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, when I think about the bandwidth of Steven's creativity and the way you built your model and other things like that, like those are two usually not related examples of the same sentence, Steven. So good on that one.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it really comes down to creativity as a tool. It's not just an outcome, and it's not just some benighted state that we find ourselves in. It's a product of discipline combined with talent and repetition. In fact, so in the original papers I wrote out, the first article was The Craft of Creativity, and the second one was literally called Body of Work, and it was about the concept that you're not going to write you're not going to write a good song until you've written 100 bad songs. You're not going to do a podcast good until you've done 90 bad ones, right? Because it's the failure that teaches us along the way, and that doesn't necessarily mean there's not value in every single one of those. Every lesson learned has value, but at the same time, if there's a conscious direction to that. If we're actually saying, especially when we're trying to build a body, I'm gonna write 100 songs. Damn, maybe see if this guy's right, And but it comes out with starting with a goal, so you have something achievable, and that's important in business. That's important, I think, in pretty much all factors of life. You can't just, no matter how inspired you are, no matter how driven you are, you can't just drive blindly. You have to very much be aiming at a target, and that to be that target is defining before you start this work. What is the goal of this? What defines success so that I know when to step away and say, this is good enough? Because perfection will kill you, Oh,
that's great, man. You're dropping knowledge today, Steven. So this one, I guess I didn't realize this until I got maybe a little bit further in my career. And again, I've only been in media now going on 5 years. So I'm not claiming to be this seasoned pro, but let's just say I have a little bit of experience behind me. But that being said, can you talk about the power or the significance of having a catalog and a body of work? And maybe we're talking to some of our newer creators or people that are just a couple years in. But can you talk about like how important that creating that body of work is, like what that can mean to you down the line, whether you're looking back at it, whether you're building on it and you choose to progress your career, like just in general, like what does a catalog and a body of work mean to you?
Oh, mixed feelings, especially for the music industry where we've been fighting for credits for 25 years. There's no IMDb really for the music industry. But all credits is coming along, but so mixed feelings there. But from a general perspective, I'd say that the first and most important value of creating a body of work is really being able to look back upon it and be able to evaluate your progress and your goals and your steering, and seeing where you were aiming then, how you got to where you went, and what made you shift gears, what made you change. It's all well and good to say, I always IMDb credits or I have all this stuff. And then fundamentally, that's a shorthand language that's spoken in the industry. But I think the real value is in learning what you learned about your storytelling, your message, your process along the way, and how you really hit these inflection points, whether it's a new project, whether it's a new opportunity, whether it's working with new people and new ideas or new tools, really getting a sense of how you adapted to change, how you adjusted, and then how you then took that to the next level, because it's going to still be levels of evolution. And you're going to see that both in terms of your technique, but I think also clarity of message or clarity of purpose in the work done. And that's from the creator perspective, but it applies for the technical side as well. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of creativity, being like, a 3AC or, being a PA, a runner on a set somewhere for some, show. But, what there's still the opportunity to look back on that, whether it's from the experiences had, things that are learned good and bad. There's always something to take away from it, but really consciously being aware of where you've been and especially the stages and how you evolved through that, I think is the most value in the body of work. But you can't really discount, especially the relationships you build and the growth of yourself in a professional community as well. And I think you'll see that alongside your evolution of your projects.
Yeah, completely. And everything you're saying are just things that I've kind of noticed along the way. I can't say any of this was intuitive. Like I just kind of seen it and I was wondering how others' journeys were. And, you matched what I felt like that process could look like. Even though maybe I stepped on the landmine in the beginning about the music side, but that's where I wanted you to go with it. Definitely was the creative side and what people can think when they're looking back at that body of work. So switching focus just slightly, I want to talk more about your facility because like you mentioned a little bit about it, but I want some more details. Like when people show up, like what kind of things can they expect?
Sure. Well, we have almost 12,000 square feet of facilities that offer everything from offices, makeup, art department, production offices, to a full soundstage with 30-foot robotic jibs, green screens, full control booth, 4K ME, switching systems up there for streaming. There's also a range of insert studios and flex spaces that can be as whatever you need, from photo shoots to, 85-inch digital whiteboards, you can run workshops, production meetings, table reads, casting calls. There's a range of client and public opportunities in the space like that. But then there's also, the situation room, opportunities for large scale planning. We have multiple post-production, both audio post and video post scoring suites, massive walls of synthesizers and music equipment. Especially our sound design and audio department is a very robust, and both in terms of original scoring and also being an opportunity for others to come in and explore the equipment from either a post-production side, from a creative music side, or literally something as simple as just running, ADR or, well, it's not very simple technically, or other basic, audio processes. And everything is available as a service or as facility for hire. So it's kind of daunting, I think, when people walk in. We really wanted to walk in the main soundstage to be like, wow. And that's definitely the effect. A huge, 45-foot ceiling, massive. The gantry is just a 45-foot stage in the front, with a big booth. One of the wings of the booth is a giant matrix of vintage guitar amplifiers for reamping. The other side is a massive area we call Synth City. It's just the Creative Wonder Lab, and that's why we called it that. It's the Creative Wonder Lab. If you wanted to do something creative, you can do it here. And you can also bring in whatever elements you already work with and interface them in any way necessary. For new media, from traditional music video, we working on a short project right now. We just brought out only about a quarter of our full LED digital dance floor, and we have massive programmable dance floor with crazy guys in Miami Vice suits wearing chicken heads dancing on, and it looks great. Might even have to send you a little clip of that.
Oh, I might have to. I'm in. We'll put that in. So obviously, I mean, amazing what you've created there, and just the creative wonderland. But a building's just a building without that team. Like, I know I've had the opportunity to work with your team and putting this together, and I know they're awesome. So maybe tell us a little bit more about just how you're pulling this off with your team.
Sure. Well, I wouldn't be doing it without them, first of all. It's kind of amazing when I look back. The ideas started, 6.5 years ago, but more like 3.5 or 4 years ago. It was myself and one of my former college students who was basically volunteering, interning, And since that time, he's actually working sound right now. Hey, Alex, thank you. Um, and into now three former students, I think 13 total staff, two amazing partners, Doug Stanley and Jamie Ross, who both will be interviewing with you later on this year to discuss other elements of our mission. But yeah, just such a fantastic team across the board. Amazing, people that have come on from the get-go and really picked up job skills. People have integrated into the organization and adapted, based upon their natural, inclinations. But pretty much, we've had a very low turnover rate and a very, both independent and very creative and just amazing, team around us. And I can't thank them enough, but, everybody for, Matt and Matthew and Daria and Jai and Mason and Curtis and Patrick. And then we have a number of great, very close, producers in residence and, other, very close strategic allies. I mean, strategic allies sounds a little too corporate for these guys because we were nonstop with them, like Brandon Vetter, Joey Catches at Storylit Films. And, it's really become a matter of serendipity. And, we've seen this growth of community that starts with our team. And I can't say enough good things about what they do.
Yeah, it takes a community. I knew it. Like, it takes a community to pull off what you're doing. The level of work, the quality, just the bandwidth, the support. Like, it's definitely a community. So definitely big shout out to everybody that's helping you pull that off. So I just have to ask, Stephen. So I mean, a lot going on. I know production wise and otherwise. So what's next? I mean, what's next for you, the team, Innervoice Media? Like what's coming up next?
Well, our official full open to the public grand opening is actually tomorrow. And so we'll be doing our ribbon cutting and everything, with the Chamber of Commerce and kind of opening up our facilities to more of a public, open access, kind of commercial operation rather than strictly, specific client and project based stuff. But over the next year or so, we're really looking at focusing on stabilizing the business growth while really engaging heavily in a lot of outreach and engagement, a lot of, starting with quarterly microfilm festivals that eventually we want to lead into a full film festival. We have the West Coast Modular Society.com, which is our community organization for vintage analog, and modern synth enthusiasts. We're doing all kinds of stuff with that, with outreach and engagement, but workshops, meetups, everything from casting and acting workshops, screenwriting to technical skills development, photography, cinematography, and then community events. We started with Kids-a-Palooza here in Auburn, working with a lot of other great organizations in the community, and we're literally bringing out synthesizers and stuff for kids to play with. We're doing face painting with the makeup artists, and while at the same time, we're the police department, a lot of other great organizations are all bringing a lot to just round out an experience for the kids in general. And JB's the organization, Beat Lyrics Leaders, and working with them as they work on educational stuff into the schools and into other disadvantaged communities. Basically, fundamentally opening up access and awareness, not necessarily centered on the commercial side, although they go hand in hand, but making sure that access and awareness is out there for people to know about this and that they can create.
It's awesome. They can create. You're right. You can. I love it. It's a great message and it's a great story that I'm happy to bring to my audience. I mean, I learned a lot today, not just about your co-leverage model, like what you're doing, also why you're doing it. I mean, and your idea of creativity. And I'm excited to see more and more content come out from you and your team, from your studio. Really, if somebody's watching this or listening to this and they want to learn more about Innervoice Media, to follow your journey and really just to connect overall, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Well, our website is www.innervoice.media, and you can email us info@innervoice.media. On Twitter, we're at Innervoice Media, and on Facebook and Instagram, we are at Creative Wonder Lab. So Wonder Lab LAB is, and it's been a really pleasure talking with you, Adam. And I think it really comes down to, at the end of the day, one of our core mottos is do it yourself doesn't mean do it alone.
I'm in. I'm in. Shouldn't have to do it alone. Why? Because we have Innervoice Media. Come on, man. So no, this has been great. Really, it has been a pleasure bringing this content to my audience. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters, we're a platform that's all about bringing on mission-based entrepreneurs and executives, and really figuring out why they do what they do, how they do it, like how they're giving back to the marketplace, like what's their gift that they're sharing with the world. If that's the type of content that you're into, then definitely hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming on, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Stephen, really, it has been a real pleasure working with you and your team. And I know I'm going to be interviewing some of the other executives on your team to talk about various things on Innervoice Media. So I'm just excited. I'm excited to continue working with you and to continue building the relationship. So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Adam. I really appreciate it.